Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Really excited to have you here. We are at the top of the hour and we're going to jump right in because I think we've got a really exciting webinar for you today. So happy to have Stephen, Sarah, and Eliza here from the University of British Columbia talking about how you can work more with citizens within your community to get more trees on private property. We know that's such an important piece of our urban canopy since it consists of most of our urban canopy being on private property. But that can be kind of some homeowners are really excited about tree plantings. Others maybe don't understand all the benefits or maybe are concerned about some of the issues that come with trees. So we'll get to hear from Eliza, Sarah, and Stephen today. To make sure we have plenty of time for that, I'm going to jump in and share some of my slides. Oops, I've got the wrong thing up already. 1 second. There's all of you registered there. And sorry about that. Let me pull this one up. Off to a good start here, start of the year. 1 second. Okay, back in. Well, thanks again, everybody. Really happy to have you here. I'm Leslie Burkus. I'm the Executive Director of the Urban and Community Forestry Society. Again, really happy to have you here, starting off the new year strong with some great education, great ways for you to better understand how you can get more trees planted and cared for in your communities. Because you guys are the frontline workers making tree planting happen every day, making tree care happen every day. And without you, these big tree planting goals don't happen. So we want to make sure you have the tools in your toolbox so we can have maximum tree canopy and trees cared for where people live. So I'm going to start with a little introduction about UCFS, and then we'll hear from Stephen, Eliza, and Sarah on how they're engaging communities on private property tree planting, how they're empowering people at the neighborhood scale, and then new training pathways for you to be thinking about how you can build your competence and credentials within urban forestry. University of British Columbia offers programs that they're going to share a little bit with us here at the end of the presentation, and then time for Q&A, of course. So please drop your name and where you're from in the chat. It is so fun to hear and see where everyone is from. We have people from across the globe registered for this webinar. Let's hear where you're from and start sharing our names with everybody. This webinar is being recorded and I will share the recording with you after. You could certainly watch it again or share with your colleagues. So that will come to you after this is done. ISA CEUs have been requested. They have not been approved yet. There was just a little lag over the holiday season, but I will collect your CEU information if you are seeking ISA CEUs, and I will submit those on your behalf. I'll drop a form link in the chat at the end of this presentation, so stick around for the whole thing, and then the form will be there for you at the end. And then I have all of you on mute. I'll bring you off mute at the end so we can chat and ask questions of our presenters. If questions come up during it, feel free to drop those in the chat as well, and I'll be monitoring those. Okay, so if you're new to the Urban and Community Forestry Society, or UCFS as we go by, thanks so much for having you here. To our members, thank you for your membership. Your membership makes things like this possible, helps support our mentorship program, our Arborist Exchange, helps support the networking that comes out of this organization. If you're not a member, really hope that you'll join us when the time is right. And for everyone, the point of our organization is to build the confidence, competence, and camaraderie of all professionals who manage trees and forests to create and sustain more livable communities. So let's break that down a little bit more. What we're really here for is you as a professional. We want to be the professional membership home for the people who make and support daily tree planting and care decisions in communities. I said it right off the start. You are the frontline workers who are making tree planting and tree care decisions happen. You're growing trees where people live, and to do that, you need a network. You need your voice heard, a seat at the table, and that's what a professional membership home does for you, and that's what UCFS seeks to do. So that's our mission, and that's what we strive to do every day. We were founded in 1964, and we are a 501c6 membership organization. And that's just tax language that we are a nonprofit, but that's just kind of how the IRS sees us in the US, for those who might not be here. We are an international membership. So as I said, that we have people from across the globe who are members of UCFS. And it's really because that next bullet point there. We are a professional affiliate of the International Society of Arboriculture, ISA. And so being a professional affiliate just means that we work really closely together on credentialing, especially the municipal specialist credential. We do lots of stuff with ISA to make sure that everyone has the information they need to make strong tree planting decisions. You're credentialed, or you're getting the information another way if you're not credentialed yet. And we'll also partner community forestry with Arbor Day Foundation, Alliance for Community Trees, and the Urban Wood Network. All that to say, you can see we work with lots of partners to make sure that arboriculture, urban forestry is at the forefront, and the science is backed up, the networking, the professional development is backed up, all by working with those partners. So by now you probably know, or maybe you never knew if you only knew us as UCFS, we actually recently went through a name change from Society of Municipal Arborists to the Urban and Community Forestry Society. So hello and welcome to the new UCFS. We have a new logo, a new website, a new YouTube channel, all in the effort of trying to ensure that our members have the information they need, the support they need, and the new look really does that. And beyond just a new look, we back that up with a lot of information like these webinars as well. So check us out. I'll drop a few links in the chat afterwards to our website and to our upcoming event, so you can find out a little bit more about us and see us on those various channels. So just briefly, some of the offerings and programs that UCFS offers. So you see our City Trees publication just came out yesterday, should be in your inbox. And that is our premier urban forestry publication. I think you'll, if you aren't aware of it, please subscribe. I think you'll be really excited to see all the information. On that front cover is Ian and Cesar from Berkeley. And I just love that picture. They look so proud of the trees they're about to plant. And you know that they're doing that really active work to get trees planted. Cesar was actually an intern at Berkeley this year, and Ian is the urban forester there. So there's a profile of them. U.S. Forest Service has a story about redlining and its impacts in our communities. So really proud of that publication. Please check it out. Other offerings, our Arborist Exchange. This pays for our members to be able to go and see urban forestry on the ground in practice. So members can apply for this and they get their airfare and travel paid for to go see urban forestry on the ground. I think it's really beneficial. It's one thing to hear these case studies here, but maybe you'll hear from Steve and Sarah and Eliza after this and be like, I'd really love to go to Vancouver or to Oak Park, that they'll be profiling here, and you could go see on the ground the work they're happening. This can be a one-way or two-way exchange. So please check on our website to find out more. Applications will next be due in May. Our mentorship program, actually applications just closed for this, but I always want to bring it up so you can be thinking about if you might want to be a mentor yourself, or you might need to be mentored. And typically we think of mentor-mentee relationships as kind of hierarchical, but and someone who knows more to not as much maybe. But we want to be thinking these as peer mentorships too, because we're learning so much from one another. So the mentorship program, we help pair you, we help find somebody who might have the knowledge you're seeking, and then kind of offer you a sort of structure to meet with that person over the course of a year. So those are always due in December. Applications just closed, but be thinking about it and see if it might be the right thing for you as we approach the end of the year. Our annual conference will be opening registration soon, probably a little bit later in the spring, but we will be in Chicago this year. We'll be working with the Partners in Community Forestry Conference with Arbor Day Foundation, Alliance for Community Trees, and the Urban Wood Network. And this will be in Chicago in November. I think it's the third week of November. So stay tuned, more to come on that. We really hope to see you in person in Chicago. And if you're not familiar, our Municipal Forestry Institute, we'll be hosting that at the end of February, and we'll be opening up applications mid-year this year. This is to help you grow as an urban forestry leader. It's beyond the technical knowledge of arboriculture. This is not proper pruning, proper planting. This is how do you lead from the position you're in, and really a great chance to network with other people doing the same work. This year it's going to be taking place at Jekyll Island. Next year we plan to be on the West Coast, and it's a week-long intensive. So it's a great way to really kind of get your leadership potential moved up a little bit if you need to, or just like recommit to where you are within urban forestry and just get to hear from people doing that same work and learn from your peers. So more to come on that. Be thinking about if it might be the right fit for you. Our next learning series will be on February 21st, the pivotal role of municipal urban wood recycling systems. So really just all about how urban wood works within our communities. We of course talk so much about tree planting, tree care, but what happens when that tree needs to come down? How do we make the most of that tree? And maybe to a higher use beyond mulch. Mulch is good, but is there another use that could be come from those trees coming down? So we'll hear from Urban Ashes out of Michigan and a couple of urban foresters who are taking urban wood and doing some really amazing things with it. So with that, I'm going to thank you again. If you're a member, really appreciate having you, appreciate having you part of the community. If you're not, hope that you'll join us again when the time is right. With that, I'm going to stop sharing, and Stephen, kick it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Leslie. Yeah. Can everybody hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. So Sarah's really the force behind the screen here, because she's guiding the slides for us. So we'll introduce ourselves and jump into this right away. Really nice to see some couple of old friends in the list on the chat. So this is about something we call the Citizens Coolkit. And as Leslie said, it's about some new tools and career pathways you may or may not know about for engaging communities in urban forestry, urban greening, particularly on private land. I'm Stephen Shepherd. I'm a recently retired professor and director of CALP Group, which we'll talk about in a second. And Sarah and Eliza, you want to say a little bit about yourselves just to kick things off?
Sure, I'm Sarah Barron. I'm a collaborator with the CALP, the Collaborative for Advanced Landscape Planning. I'm also the director of the urban forestry programs, both the Bachelor and Masters of Urban Forestry here at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, Canada. And I work closely with Eliza Kwon. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thanks a lot, Sarah. Hi, I'm Eliza Kwon. I have done a undergraduate at UBC under the Bachelor's of Urban Forestry, which we'll talk about a little bit at the end. But I'm also an instructor here at UBC, as well as a research scientist with CALP, and a little bit helping out Sarah with the master's program, which again, we'll touch a little bit at the end as a program coordinator. So I have my feet in few roles. So that's my involvement here. But yeah, thank you.
So thanks both. I should say we all have played a significant role in the development and running of the urban forestry program at UBC, which is a pretty big program now. So if we can go to the next slide, Sarah. I think what we want to do is just give you just a quick sense of some of the work that we've been doing that sort of underlies this, the topic of this webinar. So a lot of the work we do is community-based, and the research is sort of action research on the ground, as well as teaching, instruction, and training. And we particularly focused on climate change and urban forestry in recent years, and things like participatory planning and modeling and visualization have all been strengths that Sarah and her work, some of the example in the bottom right there is some of Sarah's work from her PhD, as well as projects like the pictures on the left, which are a before and after in Surrey of what green infrastructure can contribute to cooling a major city center. And so using that in public engagement and analysis of urban forestry type of activities. Next slide, please. So what we want to really sort of build on is the fact that we really need to do a lot of work in our neighborhoods. We all, not just urban foresters, everybody really, to climate proof where we live, our neighborhoods. There are vulnerabilities, and you guys know a lot about this, particularly on the green infrastructure side, because that's a huge component, but people don't necessarily think about it as a climate change issue. So we need to retrofit these landscapes, our homes, as well as our practices and transportation, etc. And this is to meet, as you know, climate targets on carbon dioxide emissions, but also on canopy, obviously. And we want to become low carbon and resilient instead of high carbon and vulnerable, which many North American communities are, frankly. And I think you're all working in this field. Next, please. So why is the engagement piece so important in these local sort of neighborhood, micro, hyper-local, sometimes we call it, activities? Well, you know, because of what's happening around climate change, a lot of citizens are worried. Our studies with some of the early Coolkit work suggest that virtually everybody walking around on the street is unaware of what carbon emission reduction targets actually are, or indeed what canopy targets are and what we should be shooting for. So the framing is sort of missing, if you like. So people often don't know what to do, and they need our help and support from municipalities and others. Next, please. And part of that is, and the next one, please. You can go to the next. There you go. Part of what was discussed at the World Urban Forum was these kinds of issues, the need for these kinds of techniques in the hands of urban foresters. So that's really the goal of this webinar, is to support capacity building, both for communities and for practitioners, so different levels, so that we can integrate engagement into urban forestry practices and make a real difference on the ground. And many of you I know are already active in this space. So we're going to focus on applying some new cool tools, as we call them, for engaging neighborhoods and communities, particularly in tree planting and stewardship, but on other things as well. We're going to talk a little bit about how do you actually organize and mobilize that at scale, which is a tough thing to do. And we'd love to get some feedback at the end. And you guys probably have some really good ideas on what's working for you. And lastly, Sarah will talk about some of the new training pathways that are emerging in the field of urban forestry as part of this upskilling and building capacity for the practitioners themselves. Next. So we'll talk a little bit about best practices for mobilizing community climate action. And one of the good examples is in Melbourne, which Sarah knows a lot about, where everybody emailed their tree because they set up a system to do that. That was a lovely and innovative way for people to connect, and that was new and different. You can click the next 3 bullets, please, Sarah. So the principles really and best practices sort of make it local, use these place-based type of approaches, but also make it fun and simple and positive. A lot of people are looking for something positive they can do about climate action. And a key thing that we've found to be really powerful, and you can click, Sarah, please, make it visual. And so cool tools, and one more, please. Cool tools, visual media, and making things visible on the ground. So these are just, we'll show you some more examples in a minute, but the idea that people can get hands-on with some fun visual tools that really begin to show what might be possible in their existing environment, and using trees as an entry point to climate action, making that connection. Next slide, please. So the Coolkit itself, the Citizens Coolkit, has been around for quite a few years now. We've been testing it, and we're really trying to put those principles, those best practices into action. It's intended as a do-it-yourself tool that anybody could use pretty much in any community in North America, at least, and it's being used internationally as well. And it helps people learn and teach themselves to some extent about climate change and urban forestry on their own block. What does that look like? What does it mean? And so the Coolkit is intended as a low barrier access point, a one-stop shop, if you like, for almost anybody of any age or even any culture. And we've had diverse people test and help us use this. It's an online version. It's all free on the web. You can look it up. Next slide, please. But while it's a do-it-yourself thing, some people may actually do it themselves and organize things, we also feel it's important to provide a structured process to get more people acting more quickly. And so Eliza will talk a little bit about an example of that in a minute. But basically, there's a 5-step process in this Coolkit, talking about climate change and urban forestry on your block, doing some simple mapping, maybe rating or comparing your block to other people's blocks, visioning the future, and then how do we act? What can we develop as action plans? Next slide, please. So I'm going to walk you through just a couple of visuals. We usually, when we're organizing workshops around the Coolkit, we do a walk in the immediate neighborhoods of people who are walking through places they know already. We look at all these aspects, teach them how to look at causes of climate change impacts, mitigation, adaptation solutions, etc. We call it SEMA. And people like this, and it tends to open their eyes as they go through. Next, please. And one of the most popular of the exercises, a series of exercises in the Coolkit, and the one that people seem to remember the most is the urban forestry quest, and particularly this thing that we call the leaping squirrel test. And this is where basically you ask people to walk down their block and figure out if a squirrel can get from one end of the block to the other without coming down to the ground too many times. And you assume they can leap for about a meter between trees. So what we're really trying to get them to do is develop an index of their own canopy where they live and some awareness of, oh, we have a few trees, but we don't have a lot of canopy, and then start thinking about all those issues. But what people remember are the squirrels. And so it's a powerful tool to get people to open their eyes to urban forestry. Next slide, please. So thank you, somebody put a heart in, that's nice. So this walking around, you can see there's a quote here from some of the students that we worked with in Vancouver. Most inspiring activity was going outside, measuring trees, getting to know our own community. Next slide, please. Part of that is then to map it. We can do it from a sort of a scientific perspective, how much impervious area, how much actual canopy cover, have you got dark roofs, light roofs, things like that. But the next slide shows you what kids do when we ask them to do, well, before you get into the technical stuff, think about habitat, think about squirrel habitat, trees, think about pigeon habitat, roofs, think about car habitat, roads, just map it for us. And what you can see here is a color coding of just how little canopy there is in most places and how much impervious area there is. And so this is, again, a gentle way and a fun way to get people to start analyzing their own area. Next slide, please. So the fourth step is sort of going into visioning. And so this is basically getting people to simply draw on a picture of their own neighborhood. And we probably should be asking people to think about their own futures a lot more. And this is a fun, easy way for people to do it. Everybody we do these workshops with just jump into this stuff and start drawing all over it in groups. And it's a kind of a liberating exercise to open up the future. Next slide, please. And a wonderful activity at extremely local level. So we get good feedback on that. And it's all leading to developing a climate action plan that addresses those kinds of vulnerabilities, those assets that you want to protect, and the kinds of things you can do to manage and steward the urban forest, but also the grey and the housing infrastructure. Next slide, please. So all of that's available online. We've done a lot of testing, and just one set of results here from some of the earlier Coolkit testing. And the graph on the right shows you how many people knew about the city's tree canopy target before and after the workshops. And we see usually a big increase, especially amongst the adults, interestingly, and the residents. And we're able to show increased knowledge, increased concern over climate, increased awareness of those targets, and that we're really changing people's minds and influencing some of the things that they value in their own neighborhoods. Next slide, please. So I'm going to hand it over to Eliza to walk you through a recent example we've been deeply involved in Oak Bay in British Columbia on Vancouver Island. Eliza, do you want to take it away?
Yes, thank you, Stephen, for the introduction. And so I'm just going to talk briefly about the collaboration that we have been doing with the District of Oak Bay. It is a 3-year partnership with the district, we as in the University of British Columbia, as well as with community organizations in Oak Bay. And we were tasked to create a customized Coolkit for the district, as well as to run and assist with running workshops to empower citizens on taking climate action in their neighborhood at a local level. And so for those of you who are not familiar with Oak Bay is a municipality situated on Vancouver Island, and it's located just east of Victoria, BC. And actually part of the University of Victoria is located on the northern end of Oak Bay. So hopefully that gives you a sense of where it is in relation to us. And to give you a sense of their population, I think their census in 2021, they had a population about just under 18,000. And their land area is just a little bit over 4 square miles. And yeah, so Sarah, if you can go to the next slide there, please. And you can just click it through to show everything on the screen. Perfect, thank you. And so this is just an overview of the first year of the Coolkit process that we did with them. And so in the first series of workshop, we held 3 series of workshops with participants. We addressed kind of climate change in their neighborhood. What does that look like? We kind of addressed specific issues that are really important to them. So the loss of tree canopy, as well as trying to address sea level rise, as they're just near the ocean right over there. And so in that first little bit, we kind of addressed what's kind of going on in their own neighborhood. And as Stephen mentioned earlier, the climate walk, we take our participants through a walk of a specific neighborhood. And we, again, try to point out specific things that we've noticed and how could we potentially address them and what are some of the issues with what we see on that walk. And that's also part of the urban forestry quest. We get them to fill out some questions to get them thinking about some of the things going on. Another activity that Stephen didn't show is that we get them to also measure the trees just to see kind of how big they are. And that's another fun activity that participants really like to do in addition to the leaping squirrel test. And then we finish up workshop 1 with a little mapping activity similar to what Stephen showed. And that really leads us into workshop 2 and 3, where we kind of visualize what we want to see in these neighborhoods here based on some of the issues that we've identified and how could we turn them into action. And in doing so, we kind of fill out a climate action plan, which addresses how to address these issues, how to tackle some of these to create a climate action. And a side note is that we always ask participants to track their carbon footprint as well too. I'm not sure how many of you guys have filled out a recent carbon footprint calculator, but it's a very interesting activity to do, and it keeps it in mind in areas what you could do to reduce your emissions, and that itself is also a climate action. Next slide, please. Okay, so just a quick summary of the results. So we are entering year 3 so far, and these are just some of the findings that we found. Through this program, we have been able to network and train about 40 to 50 Coolkit participants. And they are very keen and active in their neighborhood, and they themselves are also helping to educate the wider community, so people that we weren't able to reach as well. So we have a broad representation from the workshops. Of course, we have the choir, the keen people who are very interested in participating. But again, through them, we're able to reach neighbors, family members, and other organizations and groups to participate in different climate action. And in the right here, you can see an image of kind of Oak Bay. The darker circles are kind of the areas and neighborhoods that we were able to reach in year 1, and the yellow dots are the ones that we've got to reach afterwards, either through the initial participants or through other organizations that kind of heard of the program from year 1. So we have neighborhood groups that are tackling these climate projects together, or individuals who are also working on their own. And so through year one, we reached about 10% of the blocks. And then now in year three, I think you can kind of see we're getting a much bigger spread, and we're able to reach almost nearly all the neighborhoods. And so just a quick example, zooming in even more into a neighborhood within Oak Bay. This is Harling Point, which is in the southernmost tip of Oak Bay. And they were super keen in trying to engage their neighbors. They set up these little events where they printed out all these maps, and they kind of identified areas of where they wanted tree planting done. And so in their first year, they were able to engage 110 homes. And they did charrettes to kind of adjust where they wanted trees, where did they want support for biking. And through this program in year one, they were able to plant 20 trees in just this small area of Harling Point. And just a quick overview of some of the climate action plans and goals that came out of it. So some of the action plans is listed down below. We kind of let them decide what are some of the activities they wanted to do, how did they want to engage their neighborhoods, and some unique things that really came out were block parties and socials, and those were a really good chance to kind of spread the message and get others interested in either tree planting or other climate initiatives. And so, yeah, the first year, and so we were able to have over 10 climate action plans. Some of them are tree planting, some of them are in other areas, but I think what's important, as Stephen mentioned, is using trees as an entry point to other climate actions and vice versa. So I think it's really important for you to kind of find the interests of the community and see where they're at, because every community, every neighborhood is a little bit different. So for this neighborhood, they're really interested in tree planting and emissions reductions. So that's kind of an entry point that we found to get and garner interest. And so far, we've had over 60 trees planted through the Coolkit program, some on private, some on public. And I think, going through about this way, it's a really interesting way to get trees, especially in private property, because I know that's usually the biggest challenge for people here. So I think this part will pass it over to Stephen here on how to scale up the community's response.
Okay, thanks, Eliza, and happy to talk in the question time if you want a bit more details on how the Oak Bay work is going to act in progress. And I know that they're trying to meet their targets for the private trees as a significant part of their canopy target for 2045. So really, this is just a quick couple of pointers, I suppose, about how we can scale up techniques like this that are working, and there are many other techniques that can be applied. Something that is replicable, that is sustained over time with follow-up. We found and heard a lot that it's really important to have a designated backbone organization that can coordinate this kind of thing over time. And continue and build and get the community themselves involved in training, capacity building for their neighbors. Next slide, please. So one more bullet, please. So there are many success stories. Obviously, on the tree planting side, you're probably familiar with many of these. Some of you, I think, have been involved in some of this. Thinking of you, Tom, out there, if you're still there. And others like Toronto, San Francisco, and Austin. I was talking to some really interesting work that's going, people who are working down there on the Tree Folks group. But there's also another group of local climate action programs like the Green Block program in Vancouver and Cool Block in Palo Alto, where they haven't really focused on trees at all, but they focus on other aspects of mostly mitigation. And so there's lots of room for putting these things together and try and hit all of these things at once. Next slide, please. So it can work. The question is, how do you get it out there? How do you implement? How do you scale it up? And I'll show you just one example of something we've tried building on the Coolkit. This is a program called Coolhood Champs, and it's run through community centers. And, you know, why doesn't every community center have a climate action program, right? So as you can see in the upper right there, we were in the Kalani brochure in spring of 2020 to run those sort of 3 workshops that Eliza described, that kind of approach to get people motivated, and we found very strong feedback, real interest, people showing up. A lot of other organizations. Actually, I think I've messed up. I think the number should be 24, not 6. That's my fault, I think. But many other groups have been interested in that, and we've run this now for over 3 years in 5 different centers, and a lot of people. And free trees are like the prize, they're one of the rewards. It's a way to get extra trees planted, primarily on private land. Next slide, please. And I'm going to hand it over to you, Sarah. This is for you now.
Thanks, Stephen and Eliza. It's so great to hear about these really positive examples of engaging community in climate action and urban forestry. It's also really fun for me to see UBC alumni on this call as participants, and current students actually on this call. At the University of British Columbia, we've had this incredible opportunity to help or to think about training and education in urban forestry. Urban forestry has really grown since I've sort of joined this field, which is now transitioning into an academic discipline and a profession. I know some professional organizations have just launched this year in terms of getting your professional credential in urban forestry. So it's a pretty exciting time to be an urban forester, and we've had a great opportunity to sort of think about these career pathways and thinking about learning competencies. So we have 2 degree programs, a Bachelor in Urban Forestry, which is a traditional 4-year degree, and a Master's in Urban Forestry Leadership, which we deliver online. We've got international cohort of students, so online works really well to bring in international experts, international students. It's also part-time, so anyone who's working and wants to get additional training in urban forestry leadership has an opportunity to continue living where they are and working where they are while learning, which is exciting. We also have extension and training courses. The first one that we provide is a micro-certificate on climate action and community engagement, which helps you learn how to do the programs that Stephen and Eliza just talked about. So I'm just going to take a few minutes to run through our programs and some of the activities we're doing to collaborate across the international body or group of people who are educating in urban forestry. So there's been a few symposiums on education in arboriculture and urban forestry. The first one was May 2019, and it was a fantastic opportunity for everyone to get together and sort of share their challenges and successes in educating in arboriculture and urban forestry. And we were able to host another one, which was a hybrid event. So some people came to Vancouver and some people came online, and we had a great opportunity to sit down and think about learning competencies for urban forestry as we move towards these more solidified, disciplinary and professional sort of boundaries. It's great to collaborate, to think about what competencies are. So you can see a photo there of some of us workshopping competencies and how to set them up across a range of educational opportunities. So this is kind of a funny table. It's the sort of teaching of the participants in the symposium, but we put this in because I think it shows that, we're not just talking about a traditional 4-year degree. We're talking about diplomas. We're talking about certificates, bachelor's, postgraduate degrees, and community education as well. We had representatives across that spectrum talking about what urban foresters really need to know to call themselves an urban forester. We had a lot of ideas. This is not something for anyone to memorize, but this table is up to show sort of the breadth of urban forestry. And I think all of us on this call who are municipal arborists, urban foresters, arborists know that we have to know a lot of things. And I think we need to do a better job as a community to articulate what our expertise really is and promote our particular, professional skills. And so we had this preliminary, very big list. It was actually longer. This is sort of the ones that have been voted more than once. I think it's really interesting to see the knowledge domains, technical competencies, and sort of generic competencies. And we point out the community engagement was quite high on the list of competencies that an urban forester would need to know. And I'm imagining that many of you on this call are nodding your heads because a lot of our work is working with our communities. Interesting that it happened to get the same number of votes as tree identification. So, the people in the trees side of education is something that we continue to work on articulating. And so this is our first round of brainstorming. Our second round of brainstorming sort of ranked those lists and came up with the top 5 in each of those categories. So I think it's interesting that the knowledge domains of an urban forestry student should include ecosystem services, urban planning, environmental science, arboriculture, and urban ecology. And this was our participants who are educators in urban forestry. We will continue to workshop these. This isn't a final list at all, but a suggestion of a ranked list. Technical competencies such as urban forest management, tree ID, GIS, tree inventory, tree risk skills, and you can see these generic competencies that we might share with quite a few other professions, community engagement, how to be a professional practice, data analysis, etc. I think they're really interesting, and we continue to have a conversation internationally about what these mean and how we can work together to sort of solidify the discipline of urban forestry. I'm just going to quickly share a little bit about our programs if anyone's interested in further education for yourselves or for people or for your community members. We have a 4-year degree where you can minor in landscape and recreation planning or urban green space management. If you choose the urban green space management minor, you can register and go through the pathway to become a registered professional forester in British Columbia, Canada. We have a co-op program where our students get all these opportunities to work in the field of urban forestry and conservation and other things like that, which is great. So if you want more information, it's probably easiest, instead of writing down this, just UBC Buff Bachelor of Urban Forestry. I'll come up quite quickly. We have a field camp, which you can see a photo up at the top, which is, we do a lot of experiential learning at UBC, and we're really proud of that. Which is interesting because we have this online program, the Master of Urban Forestry Leadership, where we mostly work online, but we also have this opportunity for a 1-week field experience in Europe and a final session in Vancouver for students to get together and have experiential learning out in the field, looking at, we're standing on a bridge in Utrecht with Cecil Konigsdijk talking about the urban forest in Utrecht. We just had a presentation from the chief urban forester there. You can see John, who I think might be on this call, looking at the tree structure in Bosco Verticale in Milan. So we have a great time together for that week, but we also have a great time in our online lectures. And the idea is to develop leadership in the field of urban forestry. We've worked closely actually with many people who have taken the Municipal Foresters Institute, and we continue to think about how our programs might work together because it's a wonderful program as well. We've got these cohorts graduating. It's a new program, so we've only got 2, but they really work together, and I've already seen the first cohort constantly chatting with each other about their careers. We've recently introduced a part-time program, so you can do the whole thing, get your master's in 13 months as a full-time student, or take 2 years as a part-time student to get your master's in urban forestry, which can be a really key thing for expanding your career. Most of the content is designed for professionals. We have 7 courses, but we also have this capstone research project where you can really go in depth in an area of interest for you. And we've had many of these projects and they've gone all over the place, and it's been really fun to watch students explore climate adaptive trees to social science methods to all sorts of things. Many interesting research projects. Some students come in and they've had this burning question on their mind for years and they just want an opportunity to explore it in depth. And so they're able to do that with their capstone project. So it sort of bridges the gap between a traditional science master's and a course-based master's. Our next cohort, the applications are due February 15th. I'm really happy to chat with anyone if they have any questions about that or any interest. My email is sarah.barron@ubc.ca. Probably the easiest way to get some more information, but there's more information on the forestry website, and we've got lots of information from alumni. Here's Robert talking about his experience in the program, if you're interested in that. I'll pass it back to Stephen to talk about the micro-certificate in climate action and community engagement now. Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah, and you can do one more click if you like. Yeah, so really briefly, just to wrap up, we've really been working on this sort of train the trainer program to help scale up and support people who are interested in doing some of the things that we've been trying, as well as many other best practices that are out there. We cover all of that in the course. It's 8 weeks of online classes. It's a micro-certificate. We call it CASE, Climate Action and Community Engagement. It's mostly online, about 6 to 10 hours a week of work with optional synchronous sessions. In the interest of time, I'll let you. I think this is all being recorded, so you can look at it in the future. But we've now run this 3 times so far, and majority of folks are from municipalities across Canada and internationally. We've got NGOs and community members in significant numbers, and consultants as well, and others. And we're getting good ratings so far. And what's interesting is, and you can see in the testimonial from Alistair, who's in the city of Kingston, that they've actually applying their projects. And happy to see John Kozak, I think, hi John, from Calgary, who's one of our CASE participants. And so there's quite a bit of this implementation going on. And it's really nice to see that this thing is starting to roll, and there is demand for this kind of work. So again, do get in touch if you want any more details about that. I'd be happy to talk personally. I'm meant to put my email on there, but it's on the CALP website, so please go there. Last slide, Sarah, and then we'll let other people do the talking. So a few takeaways I'll leave with you. I would say there's no need to reinvent the wheel, but you do need to customize and tailor, and all the stuff like the Coolkit that's available and other cool tools on the CALP website are free and available. You can cherry pick individual exercises. If all you want to do is a leaping squirrel test, 1 click, please, Sarah. Then that's something you can do to engage people. Don't forget the squirrels. They're invasives in Vancouver, which is not good, but everybody loves them. So multiple pathways, as we've said. So I think we'll leave it there. 1 more click, Sarah, just to say thank you. And we'd love to get feedback and any of your questions. So thanks very much for coming, and we hope we can have a nice chat. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much, Stephen, Eliza, and Sarah. I feel like we got 2 presentations in one, and people may not even have known that. So thank you so much for that. Again, I will drop the ISA CEU link in the chat at the end of this, so just a few minutes. To kind of get us started, the kind of 2 presentations in one. Sarah, I know you have to drop off at the top of the hour. I don't think you might not realize what a moment we're in right now for urban forestry. You're doing the job every day, and I get it, because I've been there too. You're just like, I got to deal with ordering trees, and I've got to find out where they go, and that homeowner called me and rejected it. Like, you're in it every day. But again, we're in a true moment here, beyond just in the US Inflation Reduction Act money. This is the time where we're deciding the future of this profession. all of you together. And by deciding, I mean, are we going to decide, or what pathways do education have? Those diploma programs, the 4-year programs, apprenticeship programs, based or just on the ground experience that you might pick up as an urban forester. And it's all coming together, and we're seeing new credentials come online from Society of American Foresters. Well, ISA has their municipal specialist credential. It's all a really exciting time. We're kind of in that messy, stormy middle part of it, but I think it's exciting because in a few years, we're going to say that this is a true profession. And I come to it from a nonprofit side, and it wasn't until I started this job that I said, wait a second, I was an urban forester. I never labeled it that until I came into this job. So it's even simple things like that. So if you have any questions about the degree programs, make sure you reach out to Sarah or the rest of the team here. And then if there's any questions, please start dropping them in the chat, and I will bring you all off mute here in just a second, and you can raise your hand. But I love that leaping squirrel, Stephen. I'm one of the people who gets really drawn into that because this reminds me so much of the visioning work of my past job, and that what I think our urban foresters could do. They get asked to come to community meetings. They get asked to maybe part of their cool cities communities. I know state of Illinois has cool cities. Others do as well. Before we got started here, somebody submitted a question that asked about trying to influence tree planting or tree species on private property. Does that come up at all in your work? Because the city might be able to regulate what trees are on public property, but as we're trying to get specific trees and not just all, in my area, crab apples and the South Creek myrtles, I don't know what your tree that you're like, I wish people would stop planting that as much. Is there any way to help influence that through the Coolkit's work, or has that come up?
Eliza, you can back me up on this one, but I'll go to, so yes, absolutely, it always comes up, keeps coming up. And as I'm sure most people know, there's often a lot of resistance, especially to big trees. And in Oak Bay, it's slightly different. We do get that opposition from some, but others have really identify with local species. And the Gary oak, which you've studied, Sarah, is a very charismatic tree in some of those parts of Vancouver Island. And so it's a little easier to influence folks towards larger trees if they're perceived as somewhat slower growing, native, and we're very keen to say, adaptive. This is a tree that's likely going to survive what's coming with the climate projections, whereas other well-loved trees aren't. But very often people want the small trees or the food trees, which have a place. But a lot of people just want a small dogwood, to be pretty, which is lovely and better than nothing. But we're in that discussion all the time and trying to sort of gently push them in the direction of more canopy and more biodiversity and that kind of thing. Liza, do you want to just add anything to that?
No, I think you covered everything. Yeah, it's just exploring the ranges. There's always like a variety of options, really, I think. So again, just trying to find out which ones resonate the most with the homeowners and such.
Yeah, and I think backing up, so in Oak Bay, we've got a student intern that's sort of out there on the ground a lot of the time with the arborists, talking to people, and if they are aware that there's a larger program of reaching tree canopy, getting a number of Gary oaks in there to replace the ones that are going to age out, those kind of things can help. That's information that people didn't have before and makes them think they're part of a movement rather than just, I want a pretty tree. That's all I care about. So I think it's a process. It takes a while.
Yeah. Please drop any questions in the chat, or you are all off mute now. So if you want to raise your hand, you can come off mute and ask a question as well. I see a question from Eric, and if I'm understanding this correctly, Eric is in the Willamette Valley in Southeast Vancouver Island and talks about the large oak savannas or prairies that would not have seen tree canopy or trees. That's really true for my area too. We were a tall grass prairie state and very few trees unless you're along the river valley. So I think Eric's asking the question, kind of that eternal question of an urban area. How much native landscaping do you keep? Or if there's already trees there, we've altered the landscape, is it the same anymore? So Eric's asking, do you keep lower canopy percents or maybe try and encourage people to do prairie or something that might have been more native to the area over just trees? He mentions a fir forest in particular. Does that question make sense? Yeah.
Take a shot at that.
Yeah.
Sorry. I can take, yeah, I was actually writing a response to Eric. So it's a great question. And I think the nuances of urban forestry canopy targets is a really important part of the conversation in urban forestry. And the work like the toolkit is helping neighborhoods set these goals on their own, responding to the context, responding to the current realities. You can't set a 30-40% canopy cover target in a brand new greenfield community that's just been built and all of the trees were taken away. So I think these more nuanced solutions will help engage and empower citizens. So we do continue to work on that message that, you know, these blanket targets don't necessarily work. That is a piece of research that does need to be updated. And we've got some researchers here talking about that. But yeah, prairies, desert landscapes, we can't all have these high canopy cover targets.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that answered your question, Eric.
Eric, feel free to respond or come off mute or chat more. I have a question about how you're reaching out to communities, because I'm thinking about our foresters who are on the call, city foresters, and to me, you might get asked to a community group and you could pull something from that toolkit, the Coolkit, I should say, and say, well, I've got a little activity when I go to my next talk. So I want to ask more about how you start that first, like what's it look like to actually get into that community right away. But before I do that, Eric, I saw your hand come up, so I think you should be able to take yourself off mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, thank you, Sarah, for that response. I mean, the nuance is so important. In trying to communicate, I mean, it can really be block by block in our city, where parts of the city were part of the oak savanna prairie system and part of it are in the forest, and it's a small town, you know, 11,000 people. So it's as I'm trying to build programs to engage the population. Speaking about nuance, it's just not something that, you know, it's like people will zone out immediately as soon as you start to get very specific. So it's hard, but I completely agree with you.
Yeah, I think
that wasn't a further question.
yeah, no, it's just, I mean, I say that with this group because we know what we're talking about, but yeah, with citizens, you definitely look at, you know, what we have, what used to be there. So just very simple air photo series, and then say, well, what can we get? And we can't always get those high numbers. And I think that's okay in some places. It's not realistic in places where an oak savanna used to be. And so having those conversations of what's possible, future visioning work we've done a lot of, I think that can be a really positive way to have those conversations with communities.
Thanks, Eric and Sarah. We are approaching the top of the hour. I just dropped in the chat the ISA CEU form. Please fill that out. If you are seeking ISA CEUs, I will submit on your behalf. We will stay on for about 5 or so minutes after the top of the hour. If you need to drop off, of course, do so. Thank you for joining us. And this is being recorded, and I'll share with you after. Charlie, I think I saw your hand up. Would you like to come off mute?
Let's see. Did this work?
Yes, so we can hear you.
I'm over 70, so I'm still learning how this works.
We all are.
I was double checking if you have separate listing for people when they're doing planting for oak savannas and oak woodlands, so that way they survive the burns that would be scheduled between the two different areas. Looking at the total ecosystem. Thank you.
Sarah, you did the Gary Oak Savanna a long time ago, and do you want to start that? If you have to run, we'll jump in.
Yeah, I've got some students waiting for class at 11, so sorry, I'll have to rush this answer. To be honest, at the regional scale, no. We have the tree list for climate adaptive species in the future. We have fire smart planting guidelines, but that's a conversation that has been on the next in line for our regional conversation with our regional urban foresters is how do we talk about fire smart planting, not just for prescribed burns, but for wildfire adjacent areas.
Yeah.
So we do try to facilitate these regional conversations, but that one hasn't got up to the table yet, quite yet. It's there soon. Unfortunately, we've just had recent legislation that sort of bumped it down a little bit on the list to try and protect our treed landscapes in urban areas. But yeah, we work really hard with our local region. I think some of them are on the call right now to have these conversations and to try to help them with doing research studies to answer some of these questions. I'm going to have to say I'm happy to respond to emails, and I will see you
Thanks,
all
Sarah.
soon. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll just
I'm from Illinois, and I just get concerned that people are going to be planting things that might not survive, and sort of sends a negative note to the publicity side when trees don't make it.
Yeah, maybe I just follow up with one comment. Yes, I agree. I think, as Sarah said, there's kind of a bit of a hole in terms of best practice where you've got some conflicts between, you know, wanting more canopy and fire risk. I think that interface has not been well handled yet, at least that I've seen in our area. And I think you're right. I think it's really vital that people are given lists and tree lists and advice that is climate adaptive, and that includes adaptive to the other adaptations that we have to do. So it's complicated, right? And again, I think a simple tree list isn't enough. And I think, again, that speaks to the need for more on the ground, more sustained kind of working with people, as Sarah and Eliza was talking about, to get some of those nuances across. Even the, you know, the local ecosystem, the local soils. Some things are going to do great. You know, we're losing all our western red cedars on dry sites. No point putting something there, or a cypress, you know, in some of those sites. So they have to be adaptive, and they have to be fine-tuned, and that's tricky.
Well, thanks, Stephen and Charlie. We just started a new series in our city trees called the Resilient Canopy, and we're trying to highlight some of these tree species we need to be thinking about for a climate ready and climate adaptive tree canopy. So you're giving me a lot of ideas of how that might be incorporated. I think I wanted to point out in the chat that Brittany asked if this is available in other languages, and it sounds like this research student is taking this on, and the Coolkit will get translated into Spanish and Chinese. So that is could be a great resource for you and your communities. I think there's just so many ways that this can be applied. If you have Inflation Reduction Act money in the US, you're going to be asked to do a lot of community engagement. I know you are already, but this will really, I think, kind of up it and give you a tool that you can take, and you won't feel like you're just kind of figuring out where to start from zero. You could take this to a community and say, here's some, let's actively work on this together. Let's draw what it looks like. And that's so visual for people to get to do that.
Leslie, can I add?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. If there's time. One real quick point about that. The translations are great, and thanks, Eliza, for putting that in, because this is a thing that we've been hoping to do for quite a long time. But it's also what we've been able to see in those workshops that we've run, especially ones in Vancouver and many different kinds of neighborhoods, many different cultures and people with English as a second language, many different age classes, age groups, different income levels, renters and owners. They're all different, but they all show up. And they all seem to get this visual language. And I'm not saying we don't need to translate. We do, absolutely. But there is a universality in there, but it needs to be packaged and customized for, you know, different audiences and different cultural groups.
Yeah. Well, in the last few minutes, I just wanted to wrap up that question I asked to start with, just to kind of put a cap on that, and then we'll wrap for the day. What does it look like? Are you reaching out to communities as in a city forester, urban forester, reaching out to you to ask to lead them through this? What's that first step look like for people to get this going in a neighborhood?
Why don't I say one thing quickly, Eliza, then maybe you could talk a little bit about how the Oak Bay ones started up, or the Coolkit Jams for that matter. You've been involved in all of these things. I have to say we've been proactive in many cases, but it's a question of searching out the allies, and in most, if not all of those, you do need some strong municipal support. Oak Bay, we probably got it more strongly than in other cases, but I think that's a really important ingredient, but it doesn't automatically mean the city has to run the whole thing. Some cities want to, and some just would like to be advising, guiding, making sure things don't get out of alignment with policy. I mean, it's important. And I think we see, and correct me if I'm wrong, Eliza, but I think we see people liking to see that councils and staff are recognizing what they want to say. Do you want to add to that, Eliza? There's probably many aspects of that.
Yeah, for sure. Citizens love to see council support. It truly, like, they really see that, like, they care, and that really helps to motivate people. And just to add on, I think, like Stephen said, we were quite proactive with a lot of these things, but a lot of organizations afterwards, once you spread the word, they ended up reaching out too. And we have a lot of people who are interested. We don't have the capacity to do it, but at this point with the trainers, once you have educated a lot of people on how to kind of run these things, they themselves could also assist with some of the training and kind of spreading the message and word.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's been sort of about our go-to, is to say, well, we'd love to help you, but we're very short-handed here. So if you take the micro certificate, which is the quickest way to get into it in some depth, then part of that taking that course, the last third of the course is devoted to the participant, the learner, the person that's taking the certificate, preparing a community engagement plan, a detailed plan and budget for their community, for whatever they think the highest priority is that they're interested in, so they can walk away with something that they could potentially implement. And that's been our answer, because we do get requests quite often, and it's sometimes from municipalities, sometimes from NGOs, sometimes just community leaders. So they come from different directions.
Yeah, it almost sounds like it's open source in a way. You made the Coolkit available so people could use it if they want, but if they wanted someone to lead them through it, you guys are making that an option in your capacity, which sounds like you kind of tapped out in a good way right now.
And also pointing them, there are other great tools out there. We didn't have time to talk about them, but there are some great things out there. We just use and bring them in. So use whatever works for you, basically.
Yeah.
But,
Well, thanks so much. I'm going to wrap us up here. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I will follow up by email with the recording, contact information. We'll drop those links to the Coolkit in that email. That'll probably come out in a few days. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time. You can start dropping off here. Stephen, I saw your hand, or Sean, sorry. I saw your hand up. If you have a question, feel free to chat or come off mute. And we will see you all soon. Thanks, everybody. Bye.